Hi, in this video we'll talk about factoring trinomials. This is section 6.2. In the previous section we discussed of what does it mean to factor, and we also discussed how do we factor greatest common factor. Now today we're going to talk about different type of factoring. We're going to be doing the following. Consider the polynomial that has this general form: ax squared plus bx plus c. So in this section, in the next section, we'll talk about how to take this polynomial right here and to factor this. And remember, to factor means to write this as a product of two things or more. Okay, now in this section, I would like to discuss only one specific factoring, and that's when a equals to 1. Now in this polynomial, a, b, and c stand for some numbers that can be both positive or negative. Okay? Alright, so let me just give you a motivation of where this is coming from. Well, consider the following problem from the previous chapter. Let's say you're asked to multiply. Multiply, let's say, x plus 2 with x plus 3. And remember how do we do this? We first distribute one term in. So let me just use different colors. Let me distribute an x, and then let me distribute the 2, right? And then we get the result. Okay, so from the multiplying an x, and we get x squared, then plus 3x, and then if you distribute the 2x, you'll get plus 2x plus 2 times 3 is 6, right? And then, of course, we combine the like term, and our final answer becomes x squared plus 5x plus 6, right? And that's it. This is done, right? Because we got the final result. Now, if you look at this closely, let me just scroll down a little bit, okay? Then you can see that you have the x squared term right here. You have a term that is a number, and then you have these. Let me highlight them for you. The 3x and the 2x, these are the like terms. That's where the 5x comes from, right? So my question is, how do we go backwards? How do we start with this original polynomial, which is x squared plus 5x plus 6, and we end up with those factors, x plus 2 times x plus 3. So for this section and for the next section, that's what we're going to be doing. And the question is, how do we start with this polynomial and we sort of go back? Now, to do this, what you have to focus on is, where do these binomial come from, right? Well, definitely they have to form, if you multiply it back, right? They have to form this original polynomial. So let's think of how this is done. Okay, now first of all, we're going to focus the following way. You want to first notice that for now, for this lesson, we're only going to look at the leading term, that is an x squared. And there's only one way that you can get an x squared. To get an x squared, you have to multiply x with an x. There's no other way you can obtain x squared. And therefore, when you're going to be writing your factors, both of them going to start with an x, all right? Otherwise, you're not going to get an x squared, right? Okay, so let's go ahead. So now, since we know, let's say that's the question that we had, right? And we didn't know the answer ahead of the time. Then what you would say, okay, I got to start with the two binomials. So that's how you begin, all right? And then where the first terms in each binomial is an x. Because remember, you will need to multiply them and to get, x squared. And then the other term, the term that you should focus for the most of the part when you're doing this type of factoring, is the term that is at the end, which is right here. You see number 6? Well, look, there are different ways that we can obtain the 6, but 6 is a number. So to get the 6, you can take 2 multiplied with the 3. That's one way. Or you can take 6 multiplied with the 1. You can also find the combinations, like multiplying two negatives together. Negative 2 times negative 3 gives you a 6. And negative 6 and negative 1 gives you a 6. So altogether, you see you got 4 different combinations. Well, look, you want to make sure that when you multiply this term, you're getting a positive 6, right? So therefore, any of those 4 can work. Well, then what you do is that you try and check. So it's like a trial and error sort of business. You begin with the terms, like in this case 2 and 3, and you put them as the last terms in a polynomial. So let's say you got 2 and a 3 right here. Okay, then what happens is, since you want this to be positive, you try both of them to be positive. Now if that's the case, then as you can see here, 2 times 3 gives you a 6. X times x gives you an x squared. Now where would you get the 5x from? And that's what you have to check, is you will do the following. You will multiply x with the 3, that gives you the 3x. You multiply 2 with the x, that gives you 2x. And if those two terms add up to the 5x, then you're good. In this case, it is. And therefore, x plus 2 and x plus 3 are the factors. Now, look, that means that's the answer. Now, in a case that you were to try, let's say, not 2 and a 3, but 6 and a 1, then something will go wrong, as you can see. And what's true is that, any question on factoring will always have a particular one answer. So let's see why this doesn't work. Now, note, look, x times x, let me highlight it again. X times x still gives you an x squared. 6 times 1 still gives you a 6 that you want. However, if you try the inner term, inner, these two, right? And then you try those, that's where you get the middle term from, right? This is your 6x. And this is your 1x. And then you see what happens if you add them together, the 6x plus 1x, you're not getting a 5x, you get a 7x, and therefore this is not the factors. Okay? Now, unfortunately, when it comes to factoring the problems like that, you really just guess. Well, not the guess, you're making educated guess. You pick the numbers that give you the last term, like in this case, you see how we needed a 6, so therefore you try the numbers that give you a 6, and 2 and a 3 works. Okay, so then you try it and see if the middle terms also match. Okay, let me show you. I have 4 examples for you. Okay, so as always, try to do the problem yourself first, and then scroll and the video, and then check if you got this right. So here's I got the problem for you. Now first, let me remember, we're going to be factoring only the problems that have the leading term to be just x squared. So here we go. Let me do this. Let me try to factor x squared plus 5x plus 4. Alright, now notice it's also a trinomial. Leading term is just an x squared, and then everything is positive here, okay? We're going to go through different cases. So first, look, you highlight, let me highlight the last term, which is plus 4. Then what I'm going to do, I can do it underneath, all of the possibilities that can give me a 4. So I try 4 and a 1, I try 2 and a 2, okay? And then I check. Now, how do I begin? Every problem that has a trinomial that looks like this, you begin with the 2 binomials. You put the x in the first term, parenthesis, you put the x in the second parenthesis, that gives you an x squared, and now you try. Now, since you want to have plus 4, you can try first, let's say, 2 and a 2. Now, you need plus 4, so you put the plus here, and you put plus there, and now what happens if you try the, checking this out, this is both 2x, and unfortunately, when you add 2x with the 2x together, that gives you the 4x, not the 5x, and therefore this is incorrect, right? Okay, so you just cross it out and you say, okay, this does not work. Okay, feel comfortable crossing out your tries and then go on with the next one. Okay, alrighty, so then let me try the 4 and a 1. Okay, in what order, it doesn't matter in this case because you're still going to be multiplying each of them by x, right? So then the outer terms are 1x, the inner terms are 4x, and then you add the 1x and the 4x together, and here we go. You got the 5x, which you exactly want it right here. Now the key here, please understand, when you start factoring the trinomial, you are always focusing on the last term right here, okay? I meant to highlight it, not to cross it out, okay? So you're focusing again on that last term. That gives you an idea of where to begin. Alrighty, now let me look at more difficult cases. Now the next case I'm going to look at is where the last term is negative instead of positive. Okay, so let me scroll this down. Example number 3. So the third example I got is the following. Factor. Here we go. X squared plus 2x take away 3. I would encourage you to stop this video and try to factor it yourself. Okay? Now, since now you tried it, let's go ahead and review it. Well, the first thing that you do is you highlight the last term. Okay, it's a negative 3 in this case. Okay, next what you do, you write down all of the different possibilities that you can get a 3. Well, to get a 3, actually in this case there's only one possibility, is 1 multiplied by a 3. But keep in mind, and that's extremely important, that you want to get a negative 3, not a positive 3. Okay, so here's your game begins. You start with the 2 parentheses. They both must start with an x, otherwise you're not gonna get an x squared. And then you start trying. Now look, first let me just randomly pick the numbers. Let me put the 1 and the 3 in that order. Now notice how I put one to be positive and the other one is negative. If I don't do that, then my product is not negative 3, and that's not going to work. Okay, so it's extremely important that you use different signs. Okay, I hope you see it. Alrighty, now I'm gonna check. Now I already guaranteed that x times x, you see the x times x gives you x squared. Plus 1 and minus 3 gives you minus 3. My question is, does this term is produced? Do we get the 2x? Now to do this, again, you check. How do you check? You multiply the outer terms first, okay, and then inner term second, and then you put them together and see do they add up to 2. Alright, so now x multiplied by minus 3 is minus 3x. 1 multiplied by x is positive 1x. You put them together and it does give you a 2x, but because it's a minus here, the result is the negative 2x. Alright, you need positive 2x, and therefore this does not work. Okay, this does not work. So this is not the factoring. However, you see the fact that you're getting number 2, but it's negative 2, it tells you that you got the numbers in the right places. But the only thing you need to do is to change the signs. In other words, you change positive 1 to be a negative 1, and you change negative 3 to a positive 3. Now, keep in mind, this is still going to work. X times x still gives you x squared. Minus 1 multiplied by 3 still gives you minus 3. And now what you do if you check the terms, if you multiply outer with the outer, right, here, and you got 3x, and then inner here gives you minus 1x. Now look what happens. If you put them together, hooray, we're getting the 2x. So that checks out. Okay? To retract the steps, it's extremely important to understand that you always begin with the last term. That tells you what to try, and then it's try and error until you get to the answer. Let's go ahead. Another example. Example number 4, right? Okay, 4. Okay, so number 4. Here we go, number 4. I got the following. Now, I will also have the last term to be negative, but now the middle term is also negative. So I have x squared minus 21x minus 46. Alright, now in this case, you have a larger number, okay? So you might have more work to do. However, the idea is still the same. You highlight the last term. Okay? And then you look at the possibility of what gives you the 46. So I give you a little shortcut that you can also use. But before that, you really need to understand what you're doing. So minus 46. The way to get 46 is 1 and 46. Then it's also 2 and 23. Is it divisible by anything else? It's not divisible by 3. It's not divisible by 4, 5, or 6. Well, for now, I don't see you it's divisible by anything else other than those numbers, so it's good. We don't have that many cases to try. So then you write down the two parentheses. It's still got to be an x and an x, because how else you going to get an x squared, right? Okay, so now you need 2 and 23 or 1 and 46. However, this needs to be negative. A negative means that one of the terms have to be positive and the other term has to be negative, right? Otherwise, we're not going to get negative 46. Remember, we're multiplying. So now, let me just randomly pick, 1 and 46 in that order, okay? For now, when you first try, don't look at what's, don't try to get your answer in the first try. You got 1 and minus 46. Doesn't work, then you just get rid of it. Okay, so that's 1x. That's minus 46x. And then it doesn't give you 21, does it? No, it gives you minus 45x, which is no good. All right, that's not what you need, and therefore this is not the answer. Okay, alrighty, so then you try the other one. So you got an x and an x, and now you can try plus 2 and minus 23. Again, for now I'm doing it randomly, and then you check the outer term is minus 23x, the inner term you got plus 2x, and now if you put them together, minus 23x plus 2x gives you minus 21x, and that's exactly what you need. And therefore, this right here, let me highlight it for you, this is your answer. Now, at this point, you might already notice something interesting that's happening. You see how when you're picking up the numbers that multiply and gives you, what you need, like for example 46, it gives you minus 23 and 2, right? It gives you minus 46. Notice if you just add those two numbers together, minus 23 plus 2, then you get minus 21. That's the number that you need. Let's scroll back to what we did earlier. Even the very first problem, x squared plus 5x plus 4, the second one. You see how we got 4 and a 1? You see how the product gives you the 4? And you see how the sum gives you a 5? That's always be the case, okay? If you got the numbers correctly inside your factors, the product will be the last term and the sum will be the middle term. You see it? Okay, so you can help yourself when you are solving those problems, okay? Alrighty, so let me go back and let me do another example, example number 5. Here I have something for you right here. So I got factor x cubed minus 9x squared minus 10x. First you might say, hold on a second, this right here has a power of 3. We didn't talk about power of 3. The only thing we got are the second power, x squared. How come it's x cubed? Well, you would be absolutely right. If you see something higher than a square, something higher than x squared, then you have to think automatically about the greatest common factor, or GCF. If that's the case, if you have a degree of the polynomial higher than 2, then right away think of GCF. And here, there's obviously a common factor, and that common factor is, right, it's an x. You see, you got x cubed, x squared, and x. The common factor is an x. So what do? As before, we're going to take the x out first. That means we're going to take every term of that polynomial and then we're going to divide it by x, by the common factor. And then in red, what do we left? X squared minus 9x minus 10. And this right here is the quadratic polynomial. Now look, the way the questions are usually asked, you says factor completely. Okay, that's another key word that will tell you, aha, there got to be probably more than one step involved. All right, that means first you got to do a GCF, and then you take care of the trinomial part. How do you begin? I hope you still remember. You start with the last term. In this case, it's a negative 10. You look at the numbers and you see, okay, to get a 10, I can use 1 and a 10. I can use 2 and a 5. Now, I need to have a 9. I will not be able to get a 9 out of numbers of 2 and a 5. So 1 and a 10 is what I'm going to be using. Alrighty, now let's be careful here. Now, first of all, don't forget that you still have an x. That's from here. And now you're going to start factoring. I'm going to use the red one to show you that that's the result of factoring the term that inside. So I'm going to put the x. I'm going to put the x, correct? Okay, now I gotta start to play with 1 and a 10. Now remember, I want that middle term to be minus 9, and the product is minus 10, so I need one of them to be positive and another one is negative. So I'm gonna put, you see, if I put plus 10 and I put minus 1, alright, I'm getting minus 10 as I want, but if I check the middle term, right, over here, the 10x, and I check this one right here is minus 1x, I'm actually going to be getting minus 1x plus 10x. That gives me 9x. And I want minus 9x. So what do? I'm just going to simply erase. Sorry, guys. Okay, let me just rewrite it over here. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to switch the sign, and I'm going to make x minus 10 and then x plus 1. In this case, this right here is minus 10x. This right here is plus 1x. And therefore, the sum is minus 9x. And that's exactly what I wanted. Now remember, your answer is the one that contains all of the terms, including the GCF. Alright, the GCF, that factor, and that factor. Okay, remember, you can always check whether you did the problem correctly by multiplying things out. Okay, and then the last problem that I will show you right here, the last problem I'm going to show you, example, I guess 7, and that is the following. Factor 8x cubed minus 24x squared plus 16x. Okay, and by looking at this, I first again notice that I have a third degree, therefore I'm thinking of GCF. Okay, I'm finding the GCF. So among the numbers, 8, 24, and 16. Now 8 divides all of them, therefore 8 is a common factor of the numbers. Again, there's an x that they share, so I'm going to take 8x out. This is my GCF, and what's left, I'm going to take every term, I'm going to divide it by 8x, see what's left, and then I get x squared minus 3x plus 2. Alrighty? Okay, and then what do? You look at the last term and you see, aha, I got plus 2. So I'll highlight the plus 2 and I'll see, okay, what are the numbers gives me plus 2? Well, it's a 1 and a 2, and that's it. And that gives me also 3. So I know that 1 and a 2 has to go in the parentheses. So I put the x and an x. But look, if I put plus 1 and plus 2, I do get plus 2 and I get an x squared, but I don't get minus 3. So what do I have to do? I have to go and I have to change. You see, because here it gives me 1x, this one gives me 2x, the sum is 3x. That's not what I want, so I'm going to cross this out. See, I'm not being lazy writing it several times. And I'm just going to go ahead and I will change the I'll change the pluses to minuses, and this way, look, this right here is minus 1x, this one right here is minus 2x, and if you put them together, minus 1x and minus 2x gives me minus 3x, and that's what I wanted. So what is my answer? My final answer is right here. Okay, so in this example, I illustrated how to factor trinomials. And again, a trinomial is these three terms, okay, that start with an x squared. And in the next video, we'll actually continue talking about factoring trinomials, but the leading term will not be just an x squared. It will be something other than 1. All right? Okay, so I hope you practice with that, and we'll continue next time. Thanks.